It's hovering around 27,
Okay.
28. That's upper 70s, lower 80s for you imperial measurement folk.
Okay.
But I run hot, and the problem is that the basement area that I sit, that PC, that thing, and the TV, those things kick out a shit ton of heat, man.
Oh yeah. No, I can imagine.
Like,
But can you still breathe though?
oh yeah, I'm feeling respirated.
Okay. That's good. Breathing is good.
I would say, stop me if I'm overstepping my bounds, but I feel
Go
like
ahead.
that we can put this podcast on a firm breathing positivity stance.
Breathing is good.
It's a high quality activity.
Air getting through, hitting the lungs, coming back out the nose. My nose is a little bit blocked right now.
That kind of fucked that bit up a
No,
little.
but breathing is good. It's good. It's a good thing to be able to do, you know?
It's all right.
Yeah. So this episode of Castle Super Beast is probably going to get somewhat awkward for anyone who thinks it's going to get awkward, because there's people out there like that. But hey, guess what? That's probably a good thing. It's go ahead.
We've had like, I remember when COVID happened, and we were like, oh man, we're gonna keep that shit out of the podcast, and then COVID happened. It feels like that.
Yeah, you know, there's things worse to experience in life than feeling awkward at what you're hearing. I suppose, you know. Yeah, I honestly, like, you can imagine it's a fucking mental, it's a ride. It is a weird one. I have not been as glued to my phone, just checking all tweets, following all like just footage of what's going on, like protest cameras, everything like that, like what's peaceful, what's burning, everything. The full gamut of information is overwhelming, to say the least. And like, I literally think I've gotten like perhaps like a combined 4 hours of sleep, maybe 5, over the last couple of days. It's just been, I've been just scrolling through it because there's so much shit to keep track of. And like, there's some, and like every time I'd usually come across something like incredible, I'd be like, oh yo, Punch Bomb, check this out. And then we'd go over and talk about it. And like, it's just become like a constant stream of like, okay, there's a million things that you need to find out about and to see what's going on.
Yeah, I got a bunch of buddies of mine who are glued to a stream that is this guy just like combining 4 or 5 different news streams or other live streams.
Yep.
Simultaneously, and he'll hop around different cities, and it's just like, oh, it's popping off out there.
Yeah.
It's really popping off out there.
Yeah.
Every 2 minutes it's like, oh, did you hear this shit? No, that's a new one.
I mean, it's kind of like, well, so to pretty much start with, it's the kind of catalyst. The video of George Floyd dying is the kind of catalyst that, like, there are few examples of like such a clear cut, like, the moment you finish watching this, your blood is on fire or you're a sociopath. Like, there is a feeling that you get, and like, I feel like any time there is going to be a dip in the, like, I guess, motivation to like push forward with these Black Lives Matter protests and things like that. I feel like you just gotta rewatch the video and go, oh yeah, right, okay, cool, back in there.
Right, that's some heinous shit. Yeah,
it is a ridiculous motivator as far as things go. There's so much to it that, like, obviously you can go back through and look at, and I think the way it plays out right now in America is it's very hard to say, but like, you know, the joke has been ongoing that, like, hey, from the start of the year we've had what fucking World War III scares from the
2020
strike of midnight, Kobe, fucking
oh, that was this year. Oh my god, I thought that was years ago,
dude. So
this is the longest year ever.
So
Australia.
World War III, Kobe, followed immediately by Australia on fire, billion animals dead. Pandemic kicks in, everything canceled, everything quarantined, life changes. Sprinkled in the middle of that, we got literally confirmed UFO sightings. Murder hornets decided to come on and swing by. Death locusts have swarmed. And people discuss.
Oh, Ebola came back like yesterday. I don't know if you know that.
Certainly did. You know, there was a half step towards parallel universe discussion, but ultimately, you know, we not much to say there. Like fucking, like, just everything happening right now with George Floyd and the protest, the America on fire. And then Anonymous comes out and is like, hey, yo, check out this weird Epstein shit. And you're just like, this is not even summer yet. 2020,
we're not even 50%.
Not even. This year is utterly ridiculous. And there's like, this is going to be one for the ages. This is a year that, like, you know, like there's tweets where it's just like, hey, remember when people were like, oh man, 2016 worst year ever? Like,
yeah, that was Quiet Shy put that fucking tweet out. You've remember
never
that
lived
meme?
a life. Yeah, you've never lived a life, any time in your life where like you've had a year like this, you know. So, yeah.
Hope everybody's doing good out there.
Certainly. Montreal in particular was doing what Montreal does.
Celebrating police brutality.
Well, that's our specialty. The fun thing about that, of course, is, you know, up until that point, you were watching footage of a peaceful protest that was marching and otherwise honorary and celebratory and just kind of, you know, doing its thing. And the police in Montreal, if you didn't hear about it, there's a particular level of, like, just fucking garbage they carry in their hearts, because they're known for being worst in our nation, worst in Canada.
They're worthless. They're terrible out here.
And like we have and so you can go and watch, and like, so the everyone's gathered, they do the fist up, they do the 9-minute kneel, you know, and it's going, and then the police are standing and holding the line. Now the police official Twitter of Montreal puts out a 2 tweets that say, we're here in solidarity with you, we want to make sure everything is,
hey, we're with you, bro,
is safe, and you know, like, the tragedies that happened are awful, they don't represent our values, so we'll be out there with you making sure everything stays safe for everybody, and we're here in solidarity, right? So at the line of where the protesters are standing, and the cops are with the riot shields, after about, I guess, 3 or 4 hours, you know, at some point during the day, as it was getting into the evening, second line of cops comes out, and then they all take a knee, and everyone's like, yeah, and then there's cheers, and Like everyone's like, holy fuck, look at that. And there's footage of this line of cops. They all come out and they take a knee, and they are like, you know, you're like, okay, what the fuck, this is crazy. And people are getting super excited for it. And then they pull out their gas masks and put them on while taking a knee. They do their equipment switch. They get up, load up the tear gas, and launch them into volleys into the crowd that is standing there doing nothing. So,
as they usually do out here.
As they do. People scatter. You know, we get the sounds of them like running, and everyone running down, you know, the various main streets. And before you know it, it looks like the thing that happens every year here anyway, which is the anti-police brutality demonstration. You know, and of course you're gonna see, like, there's your weird bits of like, you know, that pretty much like while that's going on, you have these other little moments of just like people that are coming out and like doing weird things. Like there's these kids in all black, these like French kids were in all black that were just like spray painting some like graffiti in Creole, and like the person who's filming it is going like, why are you writing that in Creole? Are you pretending to be Haitian? Why would you do that? That's a weird thing to do. And they don't really have much to say to them. You know, some weird shit like that. But ultimately, like, from that point, once everything scatters, you then get the escalation at nighttime into like pretty much full on crazy ass broken glass, like looting, rioting, all of it, you know,
the usual.
But you get to watch the exact moment it happened, when a bunch of cops came out, took a knee, and then like basically trolled everybody, and then got up and fucking gassed them, you know. And someone pointed out too that like it's kind of reminiscent of there's a there's like a story from 2007 for there's a protest that was not on the island of Montreal, but it was in a city like off island, but in Quebec, where you literally track a couple of cops that like, or like there's a protest over this like union or whatever, and there's a couple of buff looking protesters with masks on join, and everyone is standing there and they're having a peaceful demonstration, but then these guys grab some rocks and start marching towards the police shields, and then the protest leaders get in the way and go, what are you doing, right?
Yeah.
And they are like, they just kind of like try to shove them out of the way, and then eventually people like surround them and kind of go like, who the fuck are you guys? You're not with us, you're not doing anything that is coordinated with what we're doing. And then they get called out, and they're basically just like, these guys are cops, and they're agitating, and they're trying to escalate things right now. And
they're provocateuring.
Exactly, provocateuring. And then eventually it gets to a point where they awkwardly are called out and have nowhere to go. So they just kind of slowly start walking towards the line of shields, and the people are getting in the way because they're trying to separate them by going like, no, don't escalate. But then eventually, like after they've just been like made, after they've been made out, right? Like they just kind of push slowly into the shields, and then a couple of cops behind kind of slowly grab them and put them on the ground and arrest them and march them away. And it's the most embarrassing thing because everyone that's filming is just laughing because they're like, this is a hilarious display because you have no exit. You've been found out as a cop that's in hiding, trying to escalate this to a riot, and now the only way out is to get fake arrested behind the line and led away. You know,
very kindly.
Yeah. Shit is ridiculous. So all that to say that at least here in Montreal, they're willing to do that kind of thing. You know. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if
you know, I would like to say one thing, particularly about the Montreal protest, in that every single time I've been arguing with people on and off social media, and people have been constantly conflating my support for the protests with my support for the riots. And I have a bit of a personal experience with this because I can tell you with 100% certainty that the people protesting are not, in many cases, the people rioting. Because I have a brother, and my brother is a hot-headed, violent, dumbass piece of shit. And oh God, he must be in his 40s now. And I would bet money that if you went down and scrubbed through that footage of the Montreal rioting, you could probably see this dumbass in the background somewhere, because this is a guy that Dad caught at least once trying to sneak downtown because there might be a riot. Oh man, I could get some shit. Like what? Like not the kind of person who's bad enough to start throwing the rocks and instigate specifically for the riot, but the guy rubbing his hands. In the crowd, just like, oh man, oh, this is gonna be so sick. I'm gonna steal a phone.
I mean, there's literally interview on I think it's with CTV or CBC or whoever it is, but there's a French news report of like they're asking these people down at the manifestation, as they say, what's going on, and basically just you're looking at just a couple of like there's a couple of people standing around, and then they interview a couple of white kids that are there, and like the one that they talk to is specifically just like, hey man, yo, I don't know, he's just kind of saying in French like they're like, so yeah, why are you taking part in this? What do you like going for and stuff? And he's like, well, I know that it was originally there's about the police brutality, and the America is doing it as well. Quite frankly, he's like, both my parents are cops, so I don't know, but yeah, we're just out here, we're just seeing what's going on, and looking to maybe have some fun. I don't know, and he said, and then like the other guy next to him just kind of comes in and goes, well, it's more about sending a message, and they just kind of like, it's this very clear, he says into the microphone, I'm out here to cause trouble. Like that's what's up, and you're like, all right.
That's what's going to be known as the Jake Paul in the future.
Well, yeah. So there you go, right? That's what you get alongside it. So yes, I think it's important to, like mention that there's definitely two kinds out there. And somehow at the same time, it is equally like, it is an understandable like thing when you see, you're looking at like how these riots are like working out, and you're seeing instances of behavior from the police officers that is like the same type of mentality that it takes to kneel on someone's neck for 9 minutes. You're seeing that exact same type of mentality kick in as they handle the current events, and it's almost like there's a consistent percentage of, you should not be a police officer. What the fuck are you doing here? What is wrong with you? That kicks in.
Woolie, they give you a gun.
Yeah. And you get to see a lot of that. You get to see that scale up as the instances of, like police interaction scale up, and you get to see like the fucking likes of there's so much just insane, like how are you even remotely a cop kind of shit that's being tagged right now online, alongside the ones where you got the footage of the cops that are like, yeah, let's march with you, and we're here in solidarity and all that stuff. Like, you're seeing a full gamut of just complete nonsense, I think honestly, like there's a million things you can go into on this, and yeah, and I think, as you mentioned too, like there's a difference between like condoning the nature of like just like wanton rioting, destruction, burning things, and like basically then putting that as a larger concern over lives being lost. I think there's two different discussions happening there, you know, and in some cases,
and some willful ignorance over your point on those
I
discussions.
think so as well. Exactly. Like, and you know, there's a couple different takes on it. Like, there's a couple different, you know, people have put together their thoughts, and kind of like we've seen. There's been like I what there's the message that like I retweeted where like Trevor Noah had a breakdown where he was kind of going like this, like you're looking at some people in this are seeing this as a breaking of the social contract that we have as a society, where some people are literally like, why should I even follow that contract if my life is pretty much like irrelevant and is not and the contract is not being upheld, right? On the opposite end of things, much less by the people that are supposed to protect it and things like that, right? There's a that type of thing. I think like you pretty much of all, and then there was that other video, of course, of like the, you know, a couple people like there was the guy who's like 45 and he's just like, I've been doing this my entire life, I'm fucking sick of this shit. And the guy who's like, I'm 30, I have a 5-year-old, I've been doing this years ago, it got nowhere, I'm sick of this shit. This kid over here is 16, please find another way, do what we couldn't do because we don't know what to do anymore, you know? And like that type of energy is just like, it's a level of just like desperation that is in everyone. There's a level of desperation that is like, it's hard to convey that feeling of just absolute helplessness when you're like, I literally don't know what else to do to fix this problem, to make this go away. Here we go, I guess. It's like literally like I've tried to get the point across, and I don't know what else to say anymore, and no one seems to care, and the people who are supposed to be making the differences do not make any difference whatsoever. They're like, it becomes almost like a joke of a like slow procession anytime there's a police complaint that doesn't get followed up on, to the point where you're like, oh yeah, this dude, the officer Chauvin, had like 18 previous fucking claims against him that led to nothing.
3 deaths
That led to nothing. You're like, this type of shit is so predictable, but why nothing, you know? So the most interesting thing I saw in regards to all of this was a thread that I retweeted, and I think this would be a beneficial thing to share and discuss, at least for a little bit, because I don't see anyone really talking about this, and I feel like this could be actually positive if it goes anywhere. This is a thread by Samuel Sinyangwi, who this is from 2019, and he's a data scientist, policy analyst, Stanford alumni, and a black activist. So he is basically putting data alongside the activism, and has created a thread here that I put out there, which is, for those who are interested in research-based solutions to stop police violence, here's what you need to know based on the facts and the data, a thread, right? As soon as I saw this, I was like, this is fucking interesting, because again, the overwhelming feeling is complete helplessness and uncertainty as to what to do. Right? There's just this is the first thing I've read that just goes, here's an example of what you can actually do. And it starts with one, everything you've probably heard is a lie, specifically the most discussed solutions to police violence that have no evidence of effectiveness. For example, body cams don't reduce violence.
Not if they don't turn them on. Or,
well,
wait, I mean, even if they do have them on, like, what am I talking about?
Yeah. Literally, there is, and then again, and what's important here too, and the reason why I really like this is because every sourced link here is not it's not linking to an article written by somebody or a post of some kind on a news site or anything like that. It's linking to a research paper, And that's when you're like, okay, we have the data, we are looking at this can be trusted, right? You're looking at this first link is a randomized controlled trial evaluating the effects of police body-worn cameras. And the conclusions drawn in the abstract are that let me get to the exact sentence here. Yes, here we show that body-worn cameras have a very small and statistically insignificant effect on police use of force in civilian complaints, right? So, like, yeah. Anyway, so you get this first thing where it's like, okay, you do not have any sort of like proof here that the idea, the implication is if there's a camera, then there's accountability, right? And then that would change the behavior. And then you look at it and it goes, no, it turns out there isn't. And then there's an actual little chart where you can see rates of disorderly conduct, complaints, and use of force. And then like right beneath it is like almost the exact same line for people that are in a randomized control trial of over 2,200 officers over a period of months, right?
Right.
So great. First one is that body cameras do nothing to affect the behavior. Second is there's no evidence that better police training or programs or implicit bias training changes behavior in any way. The trainings vary in quality and rarely result in any accountability or changes in decision making. So don't put this at the top of your agenda, right? It's like, okay, so, and I'm like, when I think of it, I'm like, these are the first two things that you always hear about is camera and
better training.
And then it's like, yeah, nope. Turns out those don't do shit. So I'm like, well, what the fuck comes next? Right?
I don't know.
So third, more restrictive state and local policies. Oh yeah, so that doesn't work. So it's like what does work? More restrictive state and local policies governing police use of force associated with significantly lower rates of police shootings and killings by the police. So there's 30 years of research identified across multiple precincts in multiple counties, and basically they've put together a list and a comparison of all these different counties and what they don't like. Basically, some of them have policies that others don't have, and some of these are things that are shown to have less rates of violence in the counties where more of these things are enacted. So,
okay,
the list of the things that you can put in place to have less police violence in your area. The first one that they list is requiring officers to de-escalate situations where possible by communicating with subjects, maintaining distance, and otherwise eliminating the need to use force. Makes sense.
Tell people to calm it down instead of ramp it up.
Yes. Second, not allowing officers to choke or strangle civilians in many cases where less lethal force could be used instead, resulting in unnecessary death or serious injury to civilians.
Yeah, it's been a common refrain lately, especially on video, of like, man, those anything to do with your fucking neck.
Yep. Requiring officers to intervene, and this was the big one, requiring officers to intervene and stop excessive force used by other officers and report these incidents immediately to a supervisor. It's self-explanatory. Restricting officers from shooting at moving vehicles, which is regarded as a particularly dangerous and ineffective tactic. And
it doesn't sound like that one sounds like the least controversial enactment ever.
And it links to another source for some information on why shooting at moving vehicles is a bad idea.
Hey, don't shoot at cars.
Developing a force continuum that limits the type of force and or weapons that can be used to respond to specific types of resistance. In other words, you can tase an unarmed person, you cannot shoot them. Right? This equals that. You create a rock, paper, scissors, if you would, of if this is what you're dealing with, this is what you use type of situation. Requiring officers to exhaust all other reasonable means before resorting to deadly force. Literally, I always thought that was a thing that applied to all police everywhere. Apparently, that is not
I thought
the case
that was
everywhere.
built in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a couple of these things I thought they were built in, and it turns out they're not necessarily.
How stupid.
Turns out they're not. It turns out it changes, and that in some cases, literally, there are police union contracts that reset and change the rules over every 4 or so years or something along those lines. But I'll get to that in a second. Exhausting all other reasonable means, giving a verbal warning before shooting, when possible, and requiring them to report each time that they use force or threaten to use force, which, again, I was under the impression that every time a trigger is pulled, there's a report that has to be given about that. Apparently, that does not apply everywhere. That is not the case across the country or across the North America, for that matter, but especially in America. So you're looking at, like, things that I thought were a given that turn out to not be a given. And then they go into a list of everywhere alphabetically down from Albuquerque all the way down to Wichita and Winston-Salem. And they just run through how many of these policies exist and are active in these given places. And it runs the gamut. Some of them are half and half. Some of them they're all in place, like in Philadelphia, in San Francisco, they're all in place. In Reno and in North Las Vegas, none of them are in place, right? So you literally just have different levels of that type of accountability available in different places across the country. So you're going to get different results because literally cops are allowed to do more or less, or they're going to handle situations the way they're trained to, with more or less, like, again, accountability, you know? So that's an interesting link in and of itself, right? Going back to that original list of things, right underneath that, the next one is police departments that get more military weapons from the federal government kill more people. You can stop that from
Shocker.
You can stop that from happening through state and local policy. Montana, a red state, has gone the furthest on this. And then it gives you a link. Again, we have a study straight to an academic paper, not, hearsay or anything that is just questionable. Hard data that shows you they've tracked the number of military equipment transfers to various departments, law enforcement agencies, and looking at the abstract, straight up, let me get the exact sentence here for you. Yes, exactly. So there is a direct correlation between the number of military equipment transfers to the law enforcement agencies and the cases of civilian casualties, police violence instances, and the number of dogs killed by police.
Ugh.
If there are more military transfers to your precinct, and like the equipment that you see goes into that, like the higher level of that equipment goes, the more dogs are getting killed in any given area, alongside fucking everything else, right? So I was like, wait, that's a stat.
It's so out of nowhere. It's just by the way,
exactly. It's a stat they have but they've got the data. They've got the data. We find a positive and statistically significant relationship between military equipment transfers and fatalities from officer-involved shootings across all models. And then you can go into the full study to see there, I forget which documentary or show it was, but I remember watching something where they were like, the people that were filming, they went to a precinct and they were like, hey, ooh, look at that bad boy, what's that about? And the cops were so excited to show them the tank they just acquired and the fucking APCs and like the level of just military tech that they got, to police individual people, Anyway, so The next thing on that list goes police union contracts. Every 4 to 6 years, a police department's accountability system is renegotiated, purging misconduct records, reinstating fired officers, department funding. It's in the contract. Cities with worse contracts have higher police violence rates. So you literally have a situation where every 5 years average, a police union contract will renegotiate and let things like misconduct records disappear, and fired officers can return to work pending how hard that union fucking fights for those things. And it's kind of psychotic because the implication here is the union you think would exist to protect anyone in their given profession from bullshit from the people who pay them and above and such, and making sure that, you know, they're given their rights and so on. But then it somehow turns into this type of situation where it's like, so you are making it easier for bad officers to get off the hook, and that makes no fucking sense. Like, if you're looking at it from the point of view of, we want to make it so that our officers have every given opportunity to you know, like clear their name if something happens, and it's something that, and you want to make sure that these are good. If you're saying that these are good police officers that like got into a bad situation that needs clarification, you also have to look at the point of view of like, and then when you have bad officers that you are putting behind this shield, they're being protected from ramifications, right? So the list of things that police union contracts block accountability. One, they disqualify misconduct complaints that are submitted too many days after incidents occur or investigations that took too long to complete. Right? Things I didn't know here. Two, they prevent officers from being interrogated immediately after being involved in an incident, or otherwise restricting how, when, and where they can be interrogated. There was another side article about why it took so long for Chauvin to get arrested. This is the type of thing that steps in and explains that. Unions actually are involved in how like quickly that happens. Giving officers access to information that civilians don't get prior to being interrogated. Requiring them to pay costs related to police misconduct, including giving officers paid leave while under investigation, paying legal fees, and the cost of settlements. Preventing information on past misconduct investigations from being recorded or retained in an officer's personnel files. So when you have 18 fucking things filed against you, you can actually have those sealed away, hidden, cleared, who knows what, depending on what your union negotiates for you. And it's literally being like, nah, you didn't do nothing wrong. No problems there.
It's one of those things where it's like, I have trouble going over it in my head and figuring out which is actually the most useful. Because clearing or hiding your misconduct, that's pretty good. But I think what might be the best is just like, when you do a stupid fucking thing and you get in the box and it was like an hour ago, you're liable to say some stupid shit.
Yep.
Or not have actually gotten your bullshit straight.
Yep.
And giving the ability to like, just cool off for
it's literally called a cooling off period, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Literally called a cooling off period before they do any sort of before they open up to talk about what happened. They're given that in their union contracts. Yeah. Again, this is a lot of data I'm dropping in one fell swoop, so you know, stop me if you can't follow, or if there's anything that is just like, you know, a bit much. But again, I feel like this type of stuff was like, I'm like, this is the most informative shit I've seen. Also, the last thing on that list was there's limitations on disciplinary consequences for officers that limit the capacity for civilian oversight and structures to hold the police accountable. So, yeah, effectively, the short of this, the TLDR of this point is that unions can do whatever the fuck they want when they renegotiate a police contract, and like everything that you would think would build up to leading to people being fired when they're like, this is clearly a bad officer that's going to kill somebody for no reason. It's like, yeah, but 5 years, wipe the record, never happened. Don't worry about it. So that's bad. Then there's one that is just a straight up predictive policing on the police. Yes, use the technology against them. Data use on force, complaints, and lawsuits can be used to identify officers who are most likely to shoot someone next and prevent it from happening. Use the methodology to save lives. And this is just going into how, if you have access to those records we just talked about, you can actually put together a predictive pattern that'll show you likely which officers are going to continue frequently causing these infractions and will likely lead to an escalation where someone is killed, that someone innocent is killed, I should say, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, this was gathered through 8,600 officers that they followed over the courses of 2007 and 2015, and basically tracking the frequency of complaints and the types of complaints led to a higher predictability in the next infractions. Then it goes into investing in alternatives to police's crime prevention strategies. Every 10 additional organizations in a city, community organizations, reduces, apparently, I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is crazy, reduces the murder rate by 9%, reduces the violent crime rate by 6%, reduces the poverty crime rate by 4%. And then he links to the research on this, which this is probably the one that I'm like, really? And it's like, yeah, it straight up is saying the more community organizations you have present in any given area reduces those numbers on a hard descent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you can look at it. Yeah, the abstract breaks down the exact numbers of it, and this was the information on this, that for the increased nonprofit organizations and community centers dropping these crime rates, drew from a panel of 264 cities spanning over 20 years. So there's a large body to pull from there. This one is particularly related, and you see these every once in a while. 8 established non-police alternatives to 911 calls involving people with mental illness. For example, 1 in 5 of the 911 calls in Eugene, Oregon are diverted to mental health first responders instead of police to respond. So it goes into basically play areas where you respond to someone who is, for example, suicidal with a mental health expert as opposed to police officers, because we've seen cases where people go in and like cops go into a suicide call and then they walk out like, yeah, we shot him. And you're like, oh, okay, well, you know, glad we called you, you know.
Very, very helpful. Thanks, guys.
So that is a really good one. And again, it's like, this is the type of thing where you're like, these are working examples that just have not been scaled up for whatever reason, because infrastructure does not put a priority on these issues, but the data is there. 9, resource the Department of Justice after the current president is voted out, in brackets, to initiate more investigations of police departments. Departments that receive federal intervention have 25 to 30% fewer police shootings than those that do not. Graph here, federal intervention, reduced police shootings, and it just, there's 2 lines. One line is list of precincts where federal oversight was involved. It starts at around 250 shooting incidents over the course of 2010 to 2016, and it drops to below 100. And then the other list of precincts where there is no oversight starts at about 350, hits 400, goes back down to 350, and then back up and then just keeps escalating. So it's literally a line going down and a line going up. 25 to 30%. 10, know that change is not only possible, it's already happened in some places. Oakland police shot 8 people on average 5 years ago. And after these interventions were implemented, they had 0 shootings last year. 1 in 2018. The officers were fired for it, and 0 the year before. Lives were saved. That sounds crazy to me because I've always heard about Oakland as an insanely dangerous place. And finally, we've cataloged an extensive range of research studies and other information detailing potential solutions to police violence over here at Campaign Zero, the research laboratory. Yeah, this is all put together with links to data, which again, I find the most convincing when I look at these things. And I'm like, okay, here is a gigantic list of, shit that I have not heard of up until now that you can literally put into place that in theory and in practice would make an actual difference.
Shit that works.
Yeah. I've been talking a lot, so I'm taking a moment to untalk.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, it'd be nice to actually see things that actually work rather than, well, maybe we should do this. What is the source on that again?
So this is Samuel Sinyangwe, so SAMSWEY on Twitter, and I put the link. I'm gonna put a link to this post in the docket, and I've retweeted it on my account. So like, you should just, in fact, I'll bump it again just so that everyone can see it quicker. But like, this is the type of thing where I'm like, there's a lot of shit I say and that gets called out for being wrong and whatever the case is. In this case, I'm like, I would like to point to these research things if I'm ever having a discussion about this, to go like, well, here it is in the form of a study. Please go investigate for yourself and see. I will bump it. There we go. So it should be right up top there. Very interesting. Very interesting. Pretty fucking good shit. Yeah. Yeah. So that is the type of thing that, like, when I read that, you actually feel like I want to say hopeful, but that's not the right word, because
that is
insane. But you're like, what it is there was previously no idea what can be done to actually change things, and now it's like, it's right there. It's right there. People just have to know about it, and people who have the ability to make things happen need to care about it and decide to put an emphasis on that. But it exists. It's fucking right there. And the feeling of like, oh my God, there it is completely different from, holy shit, fuck all of this, I can't see another one of these.
Yeah.
It's a very different mental place to be at. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you I mean, like, I guess I'm just like,
I'm looking for, I'm not sure where to go or what to say next, I'll be honest, because that was quite a bit, and I appreciate you sharing it.
Well, I guess I'd we can make this a less awkward walk by going like, okay, well, um, are you like of all the stuff you're following, I guess, like, um, like what do you find has like shocked you the most outside of the original event?
The most. Let me think about that. Probably, uh, shocked. Okay, because it's definitely not the worst, right?
Yeah.
Because, but because I'm fairly cynical as a person. Probably, honestly, the thing that shocked me the most is the fact that there are this many people out in the streets at all,
Hmm.
like everywhere.
Hmm. The sheer number.
Like the huge big number.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this is this the most depressing thing that I could possibly say is that like we've all seen this song and dance before, like many times, and none of them were like this.
Yeah.
This one is very much bigger.
And to understand why, all you have to do is watch the video again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of those things where you just you like like I started said at the beginning. You click play, and then 10 minutes later you're like, "Oh yeah, absolutely. 100%. There's no questions here," you know? Um and like you have to also take into account the fact that it's like, could you imagine if we had that level of clarity of video for all of the instances you hear about on a regular basis? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you didn't have this level of clarity on that video, it would not be as cut and dry. If there was no footage, then you would just hear about it. It would be a story. People would not really have a visual of how fucking clear cut it is that this dude and his ego were the only thing that killed a man for fucking nothing.
Apparently he knew.
Yes,
Personally.
from working together for 17 years as bouncers at the joint across the street or whatever. Personally knew the guy, and also the officer who was like standing in front blocking people from coming on was his brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So you got that type of backstory going on. There's a story about like Chauvin and Floyd knew each other and worked together as bouncers, apparently, according to someone that was on a news report with this. So, and then you're kind of like, okay, so that type of video existing for multiple other instances would have probably netted in something like this sooner, but it was just a matter of time. It was just a matter of time.
Maybe not. I was talking with a friend of mine, and I'm like, when do you think this is gonna, end? And he described to me that one of the problems with protests in the United States in the past has been like people eventually got to go back to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's only so long you can protest if you got to go back to work. And what with COVID and the lockdown and all that shit, nobody has to go back to work because nobody's working.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. That is true. Well, we'll fucking see, We will see. But Yeah, that's history books right there.
Oh, hey, well, as you mentioned earlier that you were going to put the source for that research on your Twitter. What Twitter would that be exactly?
Oh, Woolie Wools, WOLIEWOOZ, as LZ. But the tweet I specifically, I'm linking to it in the docket as well, so you can
Okay.
catch that as soon as you need to.